as a CEO of the company, I want to increase the amount of money that I pay to people. So like I have to bring more gigs,
Yeah.
a lot of responsibilities. But like I think the role of CEO, the quality of CEO is measured by how much you pay people.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Benny Goodman, and this week we have Shota Nakama, who literally has replaced Anthony Bourdain, dun dun dun, as the guy's job that I want every one of them. He does everything, his entire existence, literally everything he does. I'm just like, I wish I did that. And he's like, I should be paid for it. And he is.
Okay, we've started with a rant, and get ready for 12 more of those throughout this episode.
They were like progressively larger rants as they went on.
Mind blowing.
But Shota is really one of the guests that connects, I think, with what we're doing through Lost Symphony and the production and the orchestral world. So it's a great conversation that we learned a ton from, and I think anyone's gonna be able to pick out a lot of nuggets in there as far as navigating the creative process in the business world. Especially as a creative, he talks about some decisions that he's had to make, as a business owner that he didn't realize he had to make as a creative person.
Yeah, and we got into a lot of the creative discussions of composing non-linear video game music. So if you're into the nerdier side of composition and production, this is definitely the episode for you.
He forced, just so you know, he forced Berklee School of Music to get a new teacher to make video game music a thing. And
which we talked about in part one.
This is also part one, but go back and watch it. He also risked the entire farm. And it's not a farm in Asia, not his farm, but he risked the farm to be at Boston Symphony Hall and then Japan. They flew all their dignitary news people out there to cover it because, again, it's an international affair with this guy all the time.
You'll hear all about this multiple times from Ben throughout the episode, so let's get into part 2
I don't even believe it.
with Shota Nakama right now, 2020. Subscribe.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of 2020. I'm here with Cory Peza and Benny Goodman. My name is Siobhán Cronin, and we are back for part 2 with our incredible guest, Shota Nakama. I hope I pronounced that properly.
Hopefully our boss soon. I work for Shota. Shota, when do I punch the time clock?
Creator of the Video Game Orchestra, incredible entrepreneur. He had an amazing story that he had to tell in part 1, so go back and check that out if you haven't yet.
He's the creator of the video game sector of music.
He's the creator of many things.
He made Berklee School of Music get a teacher to teach what he's doing anyway, because he made his little after-school class for his friends, and they're like, oh, I guess we should have this. And then apparently when he did it at a bigger level, the Japanese people flew Japanese reporters out there because apparently Japan thinks that this guy's a big deal. I don't know. Just saying.
But they didn't when he decided at the age of, 12, 13, that he was going to quit, become a rock star musician, move to the U.S. So you got to go listen to the whole story of part 1. Big Rebel turned into an amazing success. Can't wait to jump into more stories.
But continuing on in this hour, just because there's so much to cover, we haven't even touched upon. So, Video Game Orchestra is a huge part of your life, but it's not the only part, right? Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about some other things you have going on? I know you mentioned Soundtrack.
Yeah, Soundtrack is kind of like it started as a spin-off of Video Game Orchestra because my friends were telling me why don't you start a music production and just record it for the soundtracks and stuff. So I'm like, sure, why not? Let's just do it. And so the first gig we got was recording choir for Tekken. And this friend of mine from Bandai Namco, he was like, hey, I want this authentic Western choir sound. Can you get me a bunch of singers? I'm like, sure, yes, we can do that. And people don't tell you what it is for before you work on it. And so we didn't know what it was. But then as the story progressed, and he was like, oh, this is a game, so let's do this. And so I have a funny story about this actually. So I got together with 30 singers or something, and this composer friend, before he came over, he sent me the music. He was like, hey, can you just sort of orchestrate? And I used to sing in a choir for 3 years or something when I went to Seattle for college.
Of course you did. Why wouldn't you sing in a choir too?
Right, yeah, it's fun.
Were you good at gardening as well?
No, not gardening. I suck at that. But yeah, like it's like back then, like my teacher was like, "Hey, like it will help your English, so just join the choir." So like it actually did, and it helped me to make some friends too. But yeah, so like through that experience, I learned how to write for choir. So I kind of knew like how things should sound. So then the client asked for, "Can you write the lyrics too in Latin?" And I'm like, "In Latin, okay." So can you give me keywords, blah, blah, blah. And he sent me like, oh, so here's a text, like everything is here. And I just immediately went to Google Translator and just like made up Latin lyrics for this piece. Nobody noticed. Nobody noticed.
You know what you should have done? Wait, you had such an opportunity. You should have written it in Phoenician and given them another dead language and given them a bait and switch, and they wouldn't fucking know. Like, when you type it into Google Translate, go from Latin to Phoenician.
Yeah. But like, I think what I wrote was like a Google Translate Latin. Like, it wasn't the proper Latin, I don't think. But I knew how Latin sounded.
You're like, this is mighty caliente.
Yeah. So like nobody noticed. We signed and everything is good, and like things are okay. And,
some priest is at home like, hey, wait a minute.
You're like e pluribus unum.
Yeah. You know, like 2 years ago, I think I finally told the composer that, hey, by the way, this is what I did, and he almost fainted.
After the check cleared, you're like, by the way, yeah.
Yeah, it's like 10 years ago. Like, who cares now? But yeah, so but like we did the gig, and the gig itself went well. So he came back, and we eventually like ended up doing like a bunch of other games together, like 5-6 games of his, and until he went freelance from the company. Like we worked together quite a bit, and we recorded a bunch of solo singers for his records, and yeah, so that's how you get the next gig. Like you execute.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
When you say
this,
you just
that's this week's fake it till you make it lesson.
Exactly. So yeah, like then like we started getting a bunch of gigs like that, and people heard about us, and it just the word Boston has a kind of prestigiousness in Asia.
For sure.
And they're like, Boston is like a great city. It's like it's like a legendary
well,
city.
it's the land of Harvard and Berkeley and all these amazing conservatories, a very elite
Everyone
intellectual
in the U.S.
culture.
thinks we're assholes.
I figured him out. Like, because you come off as so humble, and you're so like, you seem like you're quiet and you're reserved, but meanwhile you're like this fucking rebel. You're like using this, you're like, fuck everyone in my country. I know I'm going to be out of here. I'm going to go to the U.S. where it's paved with gold to that city, Boston. I'm going to take it the fuck over. I'm going to be like, I don't know how much it costs. I have no money. And then meanwhile, you're fucking packing places. You're calling people. You're like, can we get Japan news over here? And like, then you're like, I'm just going to start a company. Oh, you don't want to get paid money? You don't like that? I'll find other musicians that like to get paid money. I'm going to start my own thing. And then China calls. China's like, hey, man, you want to come do this? And we're like, well, but we're playing in front of 300,000 people in Brazil.
You're supposed to save this rant for the end of the episode.
Yeah,
but
he's just going to keep adding on to it and repeat it every couple of minutes.
But I'm saying I'm blown away because it's just like he's so casual about it. He's just sitting here and he's just casual. And like, what a Japanese thing. It's like Mariko, like, oh, I was on TV at 8. No, you're amazing. Your mom told you how to be incredible by 1.5. You were literally a savant. Like, that's you. That's you. You're like, I invented the video game orchestration space. All you guys are doing, it's like when Leibniz came up with infinitesimal calculus. All right? Newton was already talking to the Pope, so he gets credit for it. So like when we came up with the idea for Lost Symphony, where we think we're doing this autonomous thing or our own thing, nothing's like this. You're like, I already invented this. I invented it. You're just living in my space. That's all I've heard this entire last episode. So thank you for having us.
At the end of the second episode, but you got an early preview, so I'm sure there's an even longer one.
Thanks for hanging. It's the end of this second part.
Like,
too. We've covered everything.
But I think like all the experiences like I gained from like making mistakes during recording production stuff or like live concert stuff, and that's like what made me, I guess, like calm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it's like the audacity at that time. You must have had some spunk where someone's like, this guy's fucking out of his mind, but now you know that you're out of your mind and you can be in your mind.
Can you, so where you're at, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think it's an important point to touch on. You know, you mentioned that, you know, going through all this trial by fire and kind of figuring things out as you go, you know, now
Good Bay restaurants.
You're a little more yes.
Calm.
You're a little more calm and you kind of have a grasp on things. But obviously at a certain point, I'm sure, you know, you were pulling your lovely locks out, you know, and can you talk maybe about a time or an example where you maybe, you know, said yes to something and then you're like, oh shit, now I have to figure this out, and maybe, you know, you struggled with that a bit?
Yeah, well, like that Latin text thing was a great example.
Well, that was you nailed that one.
Yeah, but I did it, and
That's
also
a win, dude. Like, I don't even know how. You did. That wasn't hard for you. You just fucking said fuck it, and they said, "Oh, he's right."
Yeah, pretty much. And but like also the Symphony Hall show, like risking like such a high amount of money without a clue.
But that only applies if you didn't win, but you won. You've had no negative reinforcement. You're like the guy that like, oh, I'm going to buy one scratch ticket, and the first time he does it, he wins $10,000. You're not the guy that like loses the first 6,000. You're like, I shouldn't do that. You're like, no, I won, I should buy another one, and then you win the second time too.
I guess what would be a good other way was like, what's one of the more valuable lessons that you were forced to learn in your career?
By failing. Did you ever fail at anything?
It doesn't have to be a huge failure.
Cory
It's
have
something.
his question.
Yeah, no, but like I think failure is just, it doesn't bother me. Because you know it's
because I don't do it.
It's like death is the only failure, I think, or like unless somebody kills you, or like if you die from something, like that's totally your fault.
What a Final Fantasy thing to say.
Yeah, but like. You know,
that sounds like a badass tattoo you should have across your chest.
See, like Benny, I should have said this. I should have said this. Not dead yet.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right?
Jason Becker.
Yep.
ALS awareness for Jason.
Yeah.
Jason. And I'm sure he's watching this, by the way. He's going to be like, wait a minute. How is this fucking annoying dude know that's smart guy that was so nice for me? Like, because you're just going to reiterate that I'm a nice guy, which is just hammering home bad operant conditioning, because Jason's so nice. He'll tell you, like, he's so nice. He's the nicest guy.
He's the nicest guy. He's the funniest guy, too. His emails are super funny.
Well, he talks like he's like, dude, bro. Hey, it's like, he's just like, hey, man, I was doing, like, I just, it was great because when we did the song Take Another Piece, he was like, oh, yeah. He's like, Marty and Alex Skolnick know what I think about him. But I think I met Nuno in Japan in 1989, and I think he should, like, I love him to know that, like, I really like him. He rips, or something to that extent. And I was like, hey, Nuno, Jason thinks you rip. That's awesome.
Yes.
I was so excited.
So just coming back to the discussion, I think obviously, you know, failure doesn't bother me is a quote I just wrote down. That's a pretty good attitude. Has that, you know, how has that served you? You know, aside, you know, you've mentioned a couple experiences where you kind of maybe pulled it off by the skin of your teeth, but has there been anything at any point where you would consider it like, you know, shit, I fucked up here? Yeah,
no, like, I mean, like when a lot of people left from Video Game Orchestra, that was when I thought I really failed something. And because, you know, I always want everyone to be happy in the group, and all the crew, musicians, and audience, like everybody to be happy. But then it's just like that was not the best moment of my life, I think. But you know, somehow I just kept going. Like I just didn't stop.
And what kind of things did you learn from that? In terms, was that like not only just a business thing, but a management and dealing with people kind of lesson?
Like what I learned was people don't think like you.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, you can think of a lot of things in your mind, but that's not necessarily how people see the things, right? And you have to respect that, and you have to kind of swallow what's in front of you. And
off of that one thing, when you met the gentleman who had written the previous Final Fantasy stuff that basically fooled you into coming to Japan and said, do all my dirty work. He's the guy. There's a thing. Like, so the reason I work with Cory and Siobhán, I can be like, ha 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 ha, and here's where it comes in the orchestra, and the guitars come in here, and Paul's going to play this reverse blast beat, and they get it. They literally are hearing what I'm hearing. Do you feel like that's the reason you got to to be part of Final Fantasy? Because you've talked to this guy and he's like, oh, dude, he's hearing the same songs that I'm hearing, or he's on a different frequency. Because like that is such an important thing for me making this music, is the fact that when I talk to Cory abstractly, he immediately gets what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think for his case, I think it was a little different. It wasn't really about the music that he liked about me. I think it was that life and the experience that we shared. That was what he loved about me. And he's like, dude, man, like, let's just do this. And because like he has millions of choices, right? Any orchestrators and any arrangers, anybody would love to work on.
So he's esoteric. He liked you for your mojo.
I guess.
That's the wrong word, I think, but maybe.
Never stopped him before.
What? Which one? Esoteric or mojo?
Esoteric. It's not quite. Well, it's fine. We don't have to talk about vocabulary anyway. I won't call you out on your
conflating the wrong word?
But yes, but it was like more about
Confabulating.
It was more about the personal connection, and also like I'm in a position to hire people to play with me now. And one thing I realized was that there are so many incredible players, right? So many musicians, so many talented engineers, but why do I choose this person to work with me? That's because this person is cool, great hang, great talent. And that's it.
I can completely, and it's so interesting that when you tell the stories about orchestra musicians, and in the last episode you were telling a story about the cellist that couldn't stand the buzzing of the amp in the wrong key. And, over the years, I started as an orchestra player. I got a little bit more into, playing with rock bands, different genres of music, and then into the position of having to hire people for different things similarly. And you're totally right. It's like there are so many people, and there's often a gap in that perspective because some people have just always been players. They've never had to organize, or never had to produce, never had to hire. And they wonder, why am I not getting all the best gigs? And a lot of the times, like, well, you're a pain in the ass. That's why.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's sad to say, but it's so true. I mean, it's like the people that I love to work with the most are people that get it. They've done similar things to me. We think on the same wavelength because you just skip all of that barrier in communication. You're able to get stuff done quickly.
Well, you're hammering home. I was going to say, and I apologize for it, but this is going to lead right into it. The happiest I am is that when I work with someone like Siobhán or with Cory, that they literally can just take my ideas and they can complete them, and I don't feel like I have to micromanage anything. I feel like I'm just taking two Apple computers and then making them work.
You don't feel like it's a micromanage. You just throw a spec out and then you hit the road and you're like,
but that's how I produce you guys, because you're so smart that I literally could just say,
like, hey, can you guys take all this and just make the rest of the song? I got a phone call with Verizon.
Yeah, he's like, Pro Tools, right? I'm just going to leave you here. Just press that button and you can engineer yourself.
My brother is working the smartest, not hard in this band because he composes. What he does is he does a lot of the MIDI, and his MIDI is the one that's always has no velocity, and he uses these things that aren't the right attack, but like it's the right notes and they're brilliant, but like he's so lazy. And
sounds
this
like
time
it's played by a gorilla. That's it.
Yeah, and I told Brian this time, like, Brian, can you please just make it listenable? He goes, why would I ever do that and waste any time when Cory's just going to change the velocity, put it through his library, and do all the... And I'm like, he's right. He literally just knows he can phone it in because he's smart enough that he knows the notes, that he just knows that Cory's going to be so annoyed by the fact that there is literally no velocity, and that he'll make sure that everything's perfect and he doesn't have to do anything because he's been enabled.
I'm upping my rates. Brian can make up the difference.
There are gigs like that. Like I've done many gigs like that too. So, and it depends. And if I like the person, I do it. If I don't like the person, I don't. And also, like working with musicians, touring is the thing, right? Like if you are with this person for like 3 weeks in a different country, like always like traveling, and if the people surrounding you are not good people, it's difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just kind of to take it in a different direction based off, we've been talking a lot about composing for video games. And I'm curious, as someone who's, at least, I pay attention to like movie scoring and film scoring. I've always been a big fan of that style of composition and what goes into putting together, and especially now with TV, how every TV show is now like a movie just with 10 parts. I've always like, it's a crazy process. It's so different than writing a song, for an album. What about the video game side of things, how does that differ from, say, film scoring? Because I know, I don't play a ton of video games, but I have in the past, and there's something, you go into a certain place in this game and the music changes. So is there like a whole different level of cues and detail that goes into composition for a video game?
Yeah, there are a lot of layers. So the biggest difference between the film scores and also the video game scores is that one is linear and one is non-linear, right? Like movie scores, like there's a beginning and also there's the ending. But video games, like you don't know like how many times you die in Mario stage 1, right?
A lot for me.
Yeah. And especially like nowadays, like if you play like Call of Duty or something, then you are like the music is interactive. You are interacting with music as well as with the game. And so like, some enemy shows up and then like this distinct layer of like high string pitch, like kind of eerie stuff that kind of like makes you like aware of like something bad's going to happen. And that kind of stuff is like all layered. It's all layered. And sometimes like they're just triggered by like software and stuff. But a lot of times you have to like think very differently. Let's say like this stage has like a daytime, nighttime. And then you have to think about two pieces in the same key because you have to shift to one another seamlessly. And then like you have to have the same structure, but like, kind of different melody, different instruments and stuff. So it's like, it's kind of vertical, like as opposed to horizontal.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like multivariable calculus. You can go in multiple different directions.
So tell me if this is like, so this for me, it sounds like if you're doing an EDM song, all right? And each character, each different factor is their own layer that somehow can crescendo. But instead, you're choosing which layer comes in when. And all these layers have to be synergistic, but really you're creating a unique score with all these different layers that can interact, but will give you a certain feeling, but that really at the end of the day, you're composing it with these things you've already done that will symbiotically work together regardless of how they do fall together.
How's your word a day calendar coming, Ben?
Oh, I'm into like 3,714.
It's purely esoteric. Purely esoteric.
Don't conflate my words.
No, but it really is. I think it's how many people play video games and how many of them think about the fact that when they stepped over that threshold, the music got a little darker. And that someone had to think about that and say, oh, what's the vibe in this dungeon versus when they step outside? I think that's some of the craziest stuff because you're writing, and creating, you really are creating a story with the music. And like you said, I never thought about the non-linear aspect, but you have to cover a lot of bases.
Yeah. And also like I have seen like video games without the music, without sound effects and stuff. It's fucking boring.
Sure.
Music has a power to like enhance the emotional feelings. And that's only music can do. Like visuals cannot do that.
Yeah. No, it's pretty wild. I mean, the nonlinear aspect just blows my mind. And when you approach a game, do you have to kind of think of like, what is the score going to sound like if it's all complete and then you take elements away and kind of imagine how they have to fit together? Like what is the thought and creation process when you're coming up with some of those ideas? No,
you're exactly right. I think what I usually do is like, I just create like the full like big thing and then like make it reducible.
Yep.
So
it makes sense.
Yeah, this is why a lot of video game scores, like we recorded sections separately. Like we do strings first and woodwinds and brass and everything separately so that we can be layering all these things.
So do you do you say like, okay, if I'm going to compose for an orc, I must think like the orc. And if I was an orc, I would only use a stylophone. And then you find the guy that plays the stylophone, and so when the stylophone comes in, it's the element of the stylophone that represents the orc that synergistically goes along with the entirety of your composition.
I don't know if I hear the stylophone meshing with the orc.
But that's
imagery.
operantly conditioning you to think that when I hear the stylophone, I think orc.
Yeah, like, I think you're correct. Yeah, like you decide.
I think I might be too.
No, but like you basically decide like what triggers what in the game, right? So like let's say like scary feelings, like high strings, kind of like like ponticello, like very like weird sounding and like lots of gliss and stuff. So they're like like there are sounds that can trigger your emotion in a certain way, and that's the kind of stuff you have to think about.
Sure.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know what ponticello is, it's when you play close to the bridge. Gives it that kind of like metallic,
screechy,
kind of
like,
screechy.
Yeah, screechy.
Yeah.
So how much collaboration is there with the designers of the game?
Music comes at the very end, so a lot of times, unless you're very lucky, you don't really get to like jump in the middle of the video game production to start working on the stuff. But some indie guys are super nice. Indie guys are like, hey, like why don't you come over and just check out the game, and like you can play the alpha version or beta version or whatever they have. They'll tell you everything about the games, and like then you can start developing the musical story in your head with the game's producer or director. Which makes it a lot easier. But like some big gigs, like when they're very protective about their IPs, like you don't get to see anything. Like it just like they tell you what the game is about without the title, and then you kind of have to like imagine everything.
What is a timeline like for this sort of project? Because let's imagine you get a game, once it's basically almost complete and you have to do the music. Roughly how much time? Does it vary, or like how long of a amount of time do you get to come up with all of these ideas?
It varies by the experience of the production, which means that like if the game production is really not like they're starting up, like a lot of people tend to think that music can be made in like a day, right?
I know.
For some reason, that thought is universal. Everyone thinks so. So yeah, like a lot of times, like they come in last minute and they're like, "Oh, hey, like we only got like 3 months into the release. Can you do this?" And you're like, "Okay." But yeah, some people might say, "We got 2 years into the release, and like, can we just work in chunks?" And yeah, like then you're lucky. Yeah, yeah, but like we've had situations like. See, like these are the stories you never get to hear. But there was a game I worked on. I'm not gonna name it, but so this game was. I think this was like 1 month before the release. We were still recording, which is dangerous. Like this never happens, and this is a big game. And at that level, like. Everything's done like 3-4 months.
Unacceptable.
Before, and gold masters are all done. But like, yes, like literally like we're like working our ass off and recording. We booked the WGBH studio for like 1 week straight. And I was there from 8 a.m. to like 10 p.m. every day for 7 days, recording everything. And this was like 1 month before the release. We were like, holy fuck, what's going to happen? And so like we obviously the plan was miscalculated by their end, not our end, because we were like, come on, like we got to do this. And so then we finished recording everything and they didn't make it in time. So what they did was on the day of the release, they released like this huge update. So if you didn't install the update, everything's MIDI. If you install the update, everything's live. Yep.
Wow.
Nice
Way to
plan,
hack
Pete.
that. Wow.
Yeah. Like we made the swapping. Yeah.
No, it's interesting to hear your perspective, though, because in various projects that I've done, it is similar, where a lot of people think that something can be thrown together really quickly, or you can compose something, or even getting together an ensemble of musicians. Like so often people are like, oh yeah, let's do something 3 days from now. And it's like, we all scramble to get it done and we pull it together.
Well, that's Lost Symphony. Everything we've ever done, they're like, oh, aren't you coming out in like 6 days with it? And we're like, dude, we got to talk to a guy in Ukraine to do the picture. We got to like fly people here. Our guitarist doesn't even have a face. We don't even know what he sounds like. Like all this crazy stuff. Oh, and the other guys in Canada, we don't even know if we can leave. Like it's crazy. And people have these expectations because I feel like music has been, I don't want to say devalued, but because anyone can make it on their computer with the MIDIs, that like the fact that you do this orchestra with 58 people, like most people would just be like, but why couldn't I just do that like Kanye?
Okay, well, at the risk of losing all of our listeners on the Ben Rants, I want to come back to kind of the art of composing and on working on music that has both orchestra and, let's say, rock band. Because me personally, that's something that was hard to learn, was how to write orchestral parts that complement, let's say, a bunch of guitars or guitars and drums. And I wonder if you have any perspective you can share on maybe some of the tricks of how to make some things like that work together, how to not let the orchestra get in the way of the band, or what is your compositional process when you're trying to put something together that's such a large, thick texture?
Yeah, so like that's something I struggled when I started as well. And I eventually got to the point where I had to decide what is the focus of the group. And so I said, the band is the focus of the group because it's the loudest. Very simple. The loudest. Also you can't play like an orchestra. You can't ask a drummer to play like an orchestra drummer. It's just impossible. And then he's off time all over, right? And so like we said, like, okay, the band is going to dictate the musicality and also like rhythmic like elements of the orchestra, and that then like it became a lot easier. So like when I write the music, like I write the band part first and then put the strings on, and then the rest I feel the rest. And so like by kind of taking the majority vote, I think the soundscape also became pretty clear to me, because before that, like I was like, there has to be a way to like mix everything up and just make it sound great, but it just wasn't working. In a live shows, like I was just so stuck with the idea of using amps and also like an acoustic drum kit, like big drum kit and stuff. But when you use them, like they're too loud, and then orchestra musicians cannot play in tune because like you guys listen to each other to tune. But then like, you just can't do it with the drummer just like just hitting his cymbals and like double bass, like the hardest he can do, and it's just impossible, right?
So do you use an E-kit now?
Yes.
Yep.
You must.
Yep.
If you want to get a good sound on stage, you have to. There's no question. Like there's no way you can do it unless you are like playing a stadium. Then because then they can hear you, and that stage is big enough so you can.
But what if Michael Kamen came back from the dead and did an S&M again, and you have Lars Ulrich who can't even keep a beat playing on stage, and you have a whole that's the thing that's the most genius thing about S&M for me is that one of the greatest parts about Metallica and is that James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich play perfectly together. More of like James Hetfield knows how to follow Lars's time, and I use time in quotations. But how crazy has that have to be for a Michael Kamen who came in and did S&M and all of that and took a song that's as dense as Master of Puppets and then said, but this is where the strings are going to come in, or this is where I'm going to do a variance on a theme. How did he make that work where we wanted to do this?
No, I watched the show many times, and also I listened to the album many times, and he was following the band. He definitely was following the band, so he knew the band was the star of the show. And that's how you decide, and that's how you do it well.
Yeah. It's hard to do it. Not to interrupt you, but as someone that comes from classical music where everything is overdone, you listen to Brahms symphonies and there's like 5 layers of counterpoint between the strings. And so my tendency is always to do that. And the joke that we say about Marty Friedman is, I came up with an orchestration for him. He's like, no, it's too much. There's too much going on. Like pay attention to the guitar. And I totally had to rethink the way that, I used whatever strings I wrote to complement what was there and not distract from it, but still make it cinematic and epic and big.
But Marty Friedman is a good metaphor for Japan because he gives you the illusion of free thought, like Cartesian thought, where he's like, okay, I want you to orchestrate to this. Here's an example. What he wants you to do is regurgitate his example verbatim on your instrument so that whatever he did on the guitar is now a violin thing. Whereas
basically he wanted me to program MIDI that was a transcription of his guitar.
I made fun of Siobhán and I said, you know what? We need to impress Marty Friedman. Why don't you write something wild and progressive? Not knowing that Marty Friedman actually doesn't prefer that. So he hated everything, but it was 100% because Siobhán did what I asked of her.
Yeah, but like there are certain things that you should never do, like when you play with like a lead guitar player, right? Like if you write certain string lines, like they will never be in tune with the guitar, so it gets annoying. And especially cello is never in tune with the guitars unless you have like a bigger cello section. If you have like 8, 9, 10 cellos, then it's in tune. But
it's so interesting that you say that. No, go ahead, go on.
No, like
Take notes, Cory.
Anything below that, it just like it goes out of tune, right? And also like it's just the way we do vibratos. It's different because the strings, like you guys, the pitch goes up and down. But guitars, it only goes up.
We had this conversation with Bumblefoot. I was telling him how jealous I was because as a guitarist with frets, I can't do a standard vibrato that goes up and down.
He does that
and he's
round.
you mean like this on my fretless guitar?
Yeah. So like, you need that, and also you do have to, like, ideally you need to get the true temperament frets for the guitar, because then you can be really in tune with the piano and the strings. But without that, just like dividing everything just so equally with the frets, like, you're never in tune with anything.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's something that I struggled so much with. I mean, and I play in a band now that's got one violin, one cello, and then a rock band.
Man, that's tough.
It's, you know, and when we play in orchestral settings, it's like, you know, we play well in tune. We went to university, like we've practiced our scales. Yeah. But I've never struggled so much with trying to match intonation than I have with guitars.
Well, here's if you tune a normal guitar, a G and a D will never be totally in tune.
Oh yeah,
it will never be. Right. It'll never be totally in tune. And when I found out about
F major bar chord.
Yeah,
the worst chord on a guitar ever.
I would love to play true temperament frets, but one of the things I heard, and I don't have a guitar with them, was that my buddy got the frets and they stay perfectly in tune, but that the fret job was terrible on his guitar. So that like the frets were horrible on the side, but yeah, it kept perfect tune. But it makes sense.
Yeah, you got to get the better version of it. Like, so like you have to like custom order the guitar, and there are a bunch of luthiers in Europe. Like they specialize. It's a licensed thing. You have to be licensed by True Temperament guys to implement it.
Wow.
And yeah, you got to get that, and it's just it's in tune. Like, it's so good.
Do you know what the science is behind it, Siobhán?
Well, I mean, I know that, you know, the way that violinists play intonation is also different from, like, even sometimes when you play with piano, because the piano is evenly tuned a certain way, violinists will alter certain tones in the scale, you know, to create tension, like leading tones and major thirds, minor thirds. When we play in orchestra, it differs.
If you look at the True Temperament frets, they look all wiggly and stuff, and that's because some crazy person who invented them took the actual measurements of the exact distance of what the actual notes are. So they're all kind of squiggly lines and all of that, because now you can play anywhere on the fretboard and it's literally like playing a piano, in that it's perfect. Like, you could play, you know, a chord way up here and it's the same down there, because it's the exact distance, but it looks a little bit weird because straight frets is actually not scientifically correct.
A lot of people don't know this, but if you're recording in a studio, it's not uncommon to literally retune the guitar for every single chord that you play, because you can't do a bar chord on the 5th fret and then the 1st fret and have it be the same tuning. And that's why, like, you know, people like Eddie Van Halen are famous for having the G, detuning the G string so that he can do those beautiful riffs and the double stops and be perfectly in tune. And if you try to play Running with the Devil in standard tuning, it sounds out of tune because literally the guitar is imperfect in that way. Yeah, and also, like, a lot of people don't understand about the timing of the when the sound comes out, right? So like violins, string instruments, like, it takes a little bit of time to produce a sound, but the guitar's like bang, that's it. Like,
the sound is right there. Yeah.
So like, you have to like always think about compensating this gap, that latency, when you write. Otherwise, you just like everything doesn't align and it sounds like, you know, like rhythmically completely off.
That's a lesson that I learned from Lost Symphony, getting the MIDI. And it's like the MIDI's perfectly aligned to the downbeat, but it's like everything sounds behind the beat and laggy. And then you got to go in and slide everything because the violin doesn't hit the full pitch for, you know, a couple milliseconds. You know, there's that little like kind of build up for the bow. And so it's all the stuff that you wish you didn't really have to know.
No, but stuff like that, like, I acquired these knowledge from experience, like by doing things and listening to all the sessions and hearing this, like, these differences in the characters of the instruments. And also, like, you can't write too much brass because, like, then they will complain that they're playing too much. Would have been the same deal.
Sounds like you learned a lot from the live performances, which is something that we really haven't experienced much yet. You know, it's all just recorded albums, but I guess you would learn a lot.
Before Lost Symphony does anything live, we'll be talking to you to go through everything and make it trend.
Because, you know, nowadays, like, you can fake so much in the recording process, right? Like, you can do like, hey, let's do section by section, like, let's fix everything. But I'm trying to stay away from that kind of stuff. So if you write a piece, unless it's like an interactive music, like video game stuff, if you're writing an orchestral piece, it has to be playable from the beginning to the end. It has to be. And if you have to stop and edit to like record the stuff, then as an orchestrator, it's kind of failure to me. Like you know what I mean? It has to be perfectly playable.
Oh yeah, that's why I keep getting better people for our band, because I suck. But I know that if I'm following Mariko and Siobhán, and Cory's gonna have to figure it out. Like he that's the thing is, even if he isn't the greatest in the band, he knows he's gonna have to get to whatever level is gonna be acceptable. So like between that, I know that no matter what I write, it's gonna be accomplishable. Because they're so good, and I love challenging them.
I want another
I think
race.
you just drive us to insanity. I don't know if we ever play this stuff live. We'll see how it
I
goes. How I
actually
make
think the
it
new
through.
song, the new song was written like Broadway. So like I wrote it more of like an overture. So specifically,
Yeah,
Well, I know-
but you know, like it's just like when you do a recording session, you have a time frame. Like you have this, 7:00 is like that's the time when we have to finish. That's when everyone leaves, right? Especially if you're recording in like Hollywood or like London, or they leave like right at the time. So your job as a producer, composer, or director is to finish the session with a good quality outcome within the time frame. So then you can't write something that takes time to record. So if it's playable from the beginning to the end, very easy. It just works flawlessly. But like we just had a session with a string quartet, and this composer, I warned him. He's like a pretty typical like MIDI composer, and he did
MIDI composer.
Yeah, and he did the stuff, and I told him, hey, look, I look at the score, but like this is going to take a long time, and you may want to fix this. And the reason is this, and he was like, no, like I just want to see. And guess what? It took 2 hours to finish this piece, and eventually we had to record viola and cello together, and then violins together, just separately, and just put them all together. And then like it's like, is this like, what is this, right? Like, what's the point of recording a live ensemble?
Right. If you have to divide it that much, it's you're missing that magic, I guess, of it happening
Yeah,
at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have so many notes. This is great. Who needs college?
Yeah, but but bottom line is it has to be playable. It has to be playable from the beginning to the end. Then it's a good piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, Siobhán, make sure that that's possible, because you're going to be doing all the orchestrations, and we're going to have to do it live at Mechanics Hall. We're going to have huge, giant, like beautiful lights above us. It's going to be an empty, all these pictures of presidents, a giant pipe organ, and I got to look at you, Susanna, and Marco, and just be like, and then we're going to be behind a Midas board, and there's going to be lights, and then it's just going to be like, play the whole song.
Yes. And then do it again 12 times so it sounds like we have a lot more people, like we're talking about how we shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, no, like
We need
done that.
8 cellos. 8 is the number if we want to play low. 8 is the number.
But see, like when we were just so like, even when we were doubling and layering, like we went on so far to like have players switch the bows, like change the bow, because typically players carry like 2 or 3 bows, and it sounds different. And also we would intentionally prepare chairs for like as if it's a full orchestra. And then like we switched seats and then changed the bow and just kind of shuffle them up so that like it sounds like a full orchestra. And if you go that far, then like it just sounds very, very convincing.
More notes. All right.
Yeah.
This is great.
Absolutely. Well, the nature of our project is I'm up until this point have been the only string player. So when we record stuff, it's like I'm doing all the layers of the violins and violas. And it is, of course it's missing something because I have a certain way of doing my vibrato and a certain way of bowing, and multiplying my sound
to
is not the
yourself
same.
through tracks. So Siobhán, you tell her, do a layer, do a layer, do a layer, do a layer. And because she's so like brilliant off the top of her head, she does it. But you can hear her slowly like talking to herself through all of her different takes. And it's like, but which voice do you listen to? And it's adorable.
Not that. You get a blend when you have different personalities playing. That's the beauty of an orchestra. You have different people with different styles,
But what if you have multiple
different instruments,
personalities
different bows?
yourself?
Then you have a schizophrenic album.
Like
I
Nuno
love
Bettencourt's
that.
album. Yeah.
That's schizophonic.
Yes, his album. Yeah.
Schizophonic.
Yeah.
Schizophonic.
Like 2005 or something, I think.
He's you see guys, he just posted the other day, he's putting out 2 solo records this year.
Oh, I already got messages online
but
asking what's going on.
No mentions of the new Extreme record, which I'm waiting.
Yeah,
Dude, I actually got upset because some dude wrote to me. He's like, "Hey, so I saw that New Note's like recruiting a band and all that. It's like, so what's going on with Extreme and Bo?" No, but someone inboxed me about it, asking me. I'm like, first off, If I knew, I wouldn't fucking tell you, random person on the internet. Secondly, I'm like, I'm not Nudo. I want the album just like you. Like, I don't know what he's doing, and I guarantee you, knowing Gary Sharon and Pat Badger, that they'll tell you that like they don't know what's going on either.
Yeah,
Right.
but without getting too far off in that direction, because that's a whole another can of worms. We got about 15 minutes left, and one thing you mentioned briefly before we started recording is that you're working with iZotope, the plugin manufacturer, and that's I don't think we've never had a chance to speak with anyone on that side of the music production world. So can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with them?
Yeah, so they approached me, like it's been like 3.5 years, I think, and they invited me to the company and say like, hey, like we're expanding business to Asia, like we want to put more focus, and can you just like give us some advice about the culture and the business and stuff? And so like I went in and just talked about stuff, and they kept calling me back, and eventually they were like, hey, like can you just can we hire you as a consultant to just like do marketing more? And like sure. And so like since then, like I'm pretty much involved in like a lot of the things that they do in Asia. And actually like I work with like a bunch of other companies too, because like so like once iZotope became so successful in Asia, then like a lot of people heard about it and they started calling me.
Yeah, and for anyone that's not familiar, iZotope makes like plugins that are huge, not only for music production but also post production for films and movies and audio restoration. They make just very, very useful stuff. And are they based in Boston? I know they have a presence here. Yeah. Yeah. So they're a local company to us here, but they're.
I have a question for you, Cory.
Yes.
Of all the jobs that Shota has, and he has over 7 forms of income, so he might be a millionaire. I want to know which ones you prioritize.
Playing
that you
guitar
want
on
first.
stage.
Okay. And then would it be video game music guy? Would it be iZotope curator? Would it be marketing consultant? Consultant is the greatest job. That's such a bullshit job.
That seemed like that's the one I want.
Yeah, it's like just show up because you're going to tell us about Asian culture. You're an Asian. You know about Asian culture. You do this. Help us. And they're like, will you work here for us as a consultant? Which means that you just pay for food with their money.
No, it's kind of true. Well, for me, like I'm a little bit more involved than like just talking, but like, and a lot of consultants I know, they just talk and that's all they do and they get good money. And yeah.
Well, let me ask you what you mentioned marketing. So what specifically are some of the things that you're doing for them?
So yeah, like I help guiding social media and also coming up with like a culturally appropriate campaigns. And because like our holidays are different, and and also social media is like used very differently. Like some things like the work here just don't work. Like for example, memes. Like we don't get memes. Like Japanese people don't get memes.
That sounds
like,
awesome.
It's just not our culture. So like nobody gets it.
Interesting.
And jokes are different, and and also you gotta work with local dealers and distributor. And like when you have to do that, you really do have to know the culture, and also they prefer to talk to somebody Japanese. So yeah, then I step in and talk to them and just sort everything out, and things go well, and everyone's happy.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. You have your your hand in so many different aspects of this industry that we live in, but also we talk to a lot of our guests that are in it, and some of them are very eclectic in their way, but some of them are very hyper focused in one aspect. So it's always cool to see the different perspectives of someone who's able to kind of reach around and follow that.
Yeah, but like my company has like a bunch of staff. They are helping me to do all the things, right? And that's the only way I can accomplish this. And me, but like in my heart, I love live shows more than anything. Like I want to just get up to the stage and just go fucking crazy. That's the best thing. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, what's a day in the life like right now for you at managing all these different ventures and businesses? What's an average day for you like?
Like the Mac has this screen time feature that tells you how many hours you are on, and that's just like I always regret like seeing that. Because I'm like,
I think we all do.
What am I doing in front of a computer for like 10 hours a day? Like, why?
That's it.
Well, sometimes more. Yeah, but so it's like the schedule varies every day because like I sometimes I talk to people in Germany, sometimes I have to talk to people in Japan, Brazil, and different time zones. It's the most difficult thing I think because you have to get up at a certain time, and sometimes you have a meeting at 5 a.m. and then 1 a.m. Like it just it goes crazy. But then like I get calls for doing recording sessions, orchestration, and everything. And right now I'm doing this big score for this Taiwanese pop star. I don't know him, but but yeah, I got this gig.
It's a big
and this
gig.
Is like,
I don't know.
Yeah, but like the song is like almost like a alternative, like rock, like modern alternative rock song. And they were like, "Hey, can you add like a big fucking mega orchestra to this?" And I was like, "How?" but I have to make.
But
it
you
happen.
said yes.
Yeah. I said yes, and the recording is happening on the 21st this month, so I gotta really do it. And they want like a big thing, like triple horns, like triple woodwinds, and like 8 horns, and just everything, and
Like a full Mahler orchestra. Yeah, insane.
yeah, that's the sound they're going for. But like we booked a full orchestra session in Budapest, Hungary, and we're doing it like everything at the same time, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So when do you do most? Oh no, go ahead.
Sorry, like I was gonna say, like this. The one thing about playability, so it has to be playable with everyone. Like that's what I meant to say. Like it has to be, if it's an orchestra piece, it has to be playable as an orchestra. Yeah,
sure.
And so like this session is just like full orchestra stuff, because otherwise, I know how like orchestra musicians think, and when you do sections separately, like it just doesn't quite blend together, And you listen to each other. You even listen to like oboe, horns, and everything to kind of like blend the whole thing. That's how you function, and without like having everyone in the same room, it's just like very difficult to blend in the mixing stage. Just doesn't work quite well.
When you have an orchestration project like this, for example, what is your process like, and do you tend to work writing more in the evenings and the mornings? Like what do you have any sort of rhythm to how you write and work on these projects when it comes to actually composing an orchestration for an artist, let's say?
The deadline dictates what I do, I think. So if the deadline's 3 days from now, then like I just do it like
sure, of course,
regardless of what time it is, I just do it. And also sometimes if I'm stuck and I can't think of anything, I just go out and just have fun, just eat out or something.
Wait a minute, are you the new Michael Kamen?
I don't know.
I feel like I'm listening to you talk, man, and I'm just like, you are the guy. Like you're the guy.
But
like you like literally you again. Not going to go through the whole thing, but you said, I'm not going to go to school. I'm just going to go to the land of milk and honey, not Israel, the United States. And then you're just like, I'm just going to create this thing. And now you're like, you found your own corner office in this thing. And now you're a consultant for said thing. And now said thing is like 6 different things that are their own companies. Am I correct so far? But you just want to rock out.
Yeah, I just want to rock out. Yeah.
That's what it takes, guys. I want everyone to notice. It takes being Shota to have an awesome guitar and actually being able to rock out. You have to have 8 fake jobs to actually be a real rock star.
But like I would say the majority of my income and majority of revenue, like 90% of our income, like revenue comes from music, like pure music stuff. Like the consultation is just like a 10%, or maybe
but playing live, like with but playing live
shows, live shows, and also like last year online concerts and production stuff. Yeah. So
well, since you work in video games, have you thought about doing the ABBA road, where you're gonna have like your own hologram of yourself, where you don't even have to go anywhere, worry about COVID or anything, that you can just take your video game music and you can write it non-linearly, so every concert could be different.
Oh my God.
Yes. And so like there has been talk like that, but like what?
Of course there has.
I'm just like curious, like yes, that could be good for business, I think. But like what does it do for the musicians? What does it do for the community? I don't know if that does anything for us. Not yet, at least. Yeah.
So you're like Robert Hutchings Goddard sending the Germans his V2 rocket information, just going, I want to share information, but instead they use it against us and it fucking kills us all.
No, like I just like working with people Like I don't want to work with
Yeah.
like meta and like just avatars. I don't care about that. And it's just like there's this certain chemistry. Like when you work in person with people with a big ensemble and stuff, like you're on stage and just everybody's sharing this excitement together and having this like positive exchange of positive energy throughout the concert. That's music to me, and that's why I love the concerts the most. Yeah, so that's what I want to do, and I support my people first, like all my Boston musicians, this community first. And so meta VR and stuff, great, as long as I can involve all my people. But like, I'm not as interested in that.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
So listen, as we bring this episode to an end, I just obviously want to thank you again for hanging with us. I have the show notes, but I also have my own personal notes that I've been taking down, so the things that I've learned. But we have a few minutes left, and with Video Game Orchestra and in every other thing you have going on, kind of what's next for you? What do you plan on? You have some tours coming up, but what's the ultimate goal?
Yeah.
A couple of years down the line.
Man, that's a hard question, man.
I know. That's why I saved it for last.
I think it's hard to predict when you're someone like you, I can relate to this. It's like you never know who's going to ask you to do something tomorrow. So you have an idea of what you're going to do, but
you should have
changes.
a non-linear answer.
That's the answer is non-linear.
Yes. Yeah. So
I guess ideally, what would be the?
I mean, for
situation?
music, as a musician, I want to obviously do more live concerts, and I definitely want to go back to big venues like Symphony Hall and all those places and just have a good time with everyone and just create this win-win situation where everybody gets paid and everyone's having fun, have a good time. And yeah, that's what I want to do. And as a CEO of the company, I want to increase the amount of money that I pay to people. So like I have to bring more gigs,
Yeah.
a lot of responsibilities. But like I think the role of CEO, the quality of CEO is measured by how much you pay people.
That's a great statement. I can agree with that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so
basically, I'm the worst. I'm like the slumlord of CEOs. I pay people nothing. I get like Marty Friedman to be like, "All right, I'll give you my trash price because I know you're broke." And meanwhile, I'm like you getting Symphony Hall. I'm like, but Angel Vivaldi, I have no money, and he's just like, "All right."
Yeah, but like there's a limit of what I can do, but it's still like I try my best to support the community because that's like without them, I'm nothing. I can't do anything, and I love them. I love my musicians and you guys and everybody contributing to make great music because like we are like when people are listening to our music, they're just happy, right? Mm-hmm. And they forget everything else and they're just happy in the moment. And that's the time that we want to create more. And that's what I want to do.
That's beautiful. And a perfect way to wrap this up.
Maybe idealistic, but
hey,
still a great goal to have. Yeah.
well, no, I'll tell you the most freeing thing about Lost Symphony, and this is what I've wanted to do with. We're doing a new song, and it's like 10 minutes long or whatever. Is I don't want to conform to any norm. We don't write any song that's anything like anything. So just do what I want, and I noticed that like when I like music. When it can take me a place. So I'm on my bike and I start one place and then next thing I know, I'm like, I'm a mile away from where I was and I just listen to that song.
You don't mean your hoverboard?
Well, I have a hoverboard. Well, not hoverboard. It's a one wheel mostly, but I do have a mountain bike as well. But the point is that I want it to be like a journey. And it's like, you don't listen to songs anymore that are a journey. You listen to songs that are literally vapid, that are like a TikTok generation of editing that immediately have to catch you so fast that when you're just going, din, 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 that do you find it refreshing finally getting the people that are so sick of that like they've completely reverted back to where we are?
I don't think I even caught your question.
the non TikTok editing where we are free to do whatever we want. So if he wants to write something in 11 for 7 minutes with his 54-piece orchestra with his electric drums that aren't even real drums, like you can do that and you actually can get in a room with all these people. So really your imagination is is where it stops, and I would think it'd be such a limiting box if you had to try to imitate what's popular, and the fact that you know how to write what's unpopular and it's just what you want to do is so much more unique.
It seems pretty popular based on the crowds I've seen at his shows.
I'm like, I don't know who you're talking to. Maybe you're talking to yourself right now.
Because he made that. It wasn't popular before. It's Shark Tank. He found a need for this music, and he made it, and to the point where China's like, we need this. Brazil's like, we need this. iZotope, we need this guy.
Yes, something
along those lines.
that.
We still don't know where the question was in there.
Yeah.
He's like the wolf in Pulp Fiction. Oh, all you need to tell me was Shota's on it, and I'm cool.
Yeah, Shota, thank you for hanging with us, man. Really,
thank you so much.
We learned a lot. This was awesome.
In all of this, there has been nuggets that I think everyone's been able to take home. We'll definitely be staying in touch with you and keeping track of what's going on. You're welcome back anytime. Come hang out. Hopefully we can catch you live sometime. That would be an amazing experience. Yeah. And if I can see you in Brazil, that would be even crazier.
Dude, like you have to come. Yeah.
And where's a good place for people to follow the Video Game Orchestra, to follow you, to know where you're performing or what projects you're doing?
I think YouTube has a lot of the live show videos, and also our social media channel is pretty active, like Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Okay, and where can people find those? What are the handles or the names?
Like if they type in Video Game Orchestra, it should show up.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
cool.
and the website is it's vgo-online.com. Instagram is just VGO Online.
Yeah, like everything's VGO Online, I think.
Yeah, that seems to be relatively standardized. So good job with your marketing there.
Thank you. And also, I trademarked the VGO as well. So
there you go.
There we go. Good business.
Smart. So smart. Well, we are in a position where I was going to say that Siobhán is coming to town. The whole band is coming to town. So if you're in town, we formally invite you down, man, to come hang out with us, chill with us. Feel free to be a backseat engineer, like, this will be better, because this is it, man. This is what we're doing, and we're flying Mariko and Susanna and Siobhán and Hector. If you haven't heard Hector Hellion, by the way, he's our new guitarist with Kelly in our band. He's the craziest thing that Mexico has ever. He doesn't have a face. He plays ukulele. He plays bowed guitar.
He means he wears a mask, by the way.
Right.
He has a face, I'm sure, somewhere.
I don't know. He talks
really,
like Antonio Banderas. Yeah, just go watch that guy, Hector Hellion. Like he's gonna melt your mind.
Nice. Yeah,
All right.
I'd love to see you guys in person.
Let's do it.
We'll make that happen.
Yeah.
And until next time, guys, check out
We love you, bro. Thank you so much.
.com. We'll see you next time.
Well, our band, our videos, some of them will get 20 million downloads, but we're not selling 20 million albums.
Mm-hmm.
Like, technically, if you equate that to 20 years ago, whatever, we should all be millionaires.
Yeah.
So, but we're not. We make a decent living. It's like a good business. We're working for a good business. We get the corner office with the window. That's what it is now for bands at that echelon. But there are still like bigger echelons that are around, like Five Finger Death Punch. Those guys make tons of money. And it's just I feel like it's harder, I guess, to move echelons. Like to go from the band in the van to the band in the bus, and then the band in the bus to the band with, the buses and the trailers to bring your stage show with you.